Welcome back. President Trump signing a roughly $105 billion aid package into law in an effort to curb the impact of coronavirus. The Senate overwhelmingly passing that legislation, which includes free testing, paid sick leave, and other financial safety nets. Lawmakers are currently working on another round of relief as the Trump administration works to get money back into Americans' pockets. Joining me right now is senior fellow at the National Taxpayers Union, Forward Strategies President Mattie Duppler. And Mattie, it's good to see you. Amazing how the world has changed in just the last 3 weeks, and it is having an effect on the election as well, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. You know, something that happened over the past 2 weeks is we continued to have primaries in states. Now, of course, some leaders in states that had primaries this last Tuesday, particularly in Ohio, had moved to try and delay those primaries as a result of the coronavirus. It'll be interesting to see what actions other states take in order to make accommodations, potentially moving to all mail-in ballots to keep their voters safe, because we still have a number of primaries to go. We're not done yet before the nomination is made for the Democratic contender in July.
Do you think people see this and will see this going into the election as an issue of China? China and what the behavior of China has been on the world stage? Or do you think they will look at this and say, well, the economy was President Trump's best bet and it's no longer there for him?
You know, I think it's possible, Maria, that this becomes a China story, but more than anything else, American voters care about their own personal financial circumstances. I mean, this is what roiled the Obama administration in midterms for so long. You had the president in Washington throughout 2012, 2014, talking about recovery, but most Americans felt like they hadn't experienced a recovery personally. I think the inverse could be true here. It really depends on the timeline on this, on the virus, and it also depends on Washington's response and how targeted that relief is. But Americans were feeling the effects of a very strong economy going into the virus crisis here. They were feeling really strong employment numbers. Wages were rising the fastest for blue collar workers, the fastest they had in 20 years. That has an impact, and I think that has a lasting impact. We'll see once as I said, as the Washington response continues to roll out, how quickly and how targeted that is, so Americans can continue to feel their own circumstances and continue to feel confident in them.
So let me bring the panel in here, because White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow is floating the idea that the administration may consider asking for an equity stake in corporations getting help amid the crisis. So if they get money, bailout money, maybe the administration's take an equity stake. Steve Forbes, what do you think about that?
I think that sounds like it came, sadly, from Bernie Sanders rather than our good friend Larry Kudlow. That's why you need this loan facility at the Federal Reserve, Maria. That just makes a straight loan at a straight interest rate, and you pay that loan off and you're out of the clutches of the government. But equity stakes, we should have learned from the auto industry, pose all sorts of problems. And I don't want the federal government having more claws in the economy. I want them after this crisis less, because the only way we're going to get out of all this debt and everything else is through rapid economic growth, just as we did in the 1980s when things looked pretty grim in the early 80s, late 70s.
Mattie, your thoughts?
Well, so I think we need to be careful here. There are big differences between 2008 and today. In 2008, particularly with the government action to take an equity stake in GM, that was meant to preserve an institution that had a lot of structural problems that had been laid bare by the downturn in the fiscal situation. That is a completely different situation than what we have here. Right now, we're dealing with a demand shock that will be temporary in nature if we have a strong and robust fiscal response from the United States government.
Yeah, I'm surprised this idea came from Larry Kudlow. I really am. Mattie, it's good to see you. Thanks for weighing in this morning.
Good to see you.
Join me next hour. I'll be speaking